What is up, YouTube? Got another video for you. We are talking about EMP EDC. What is this knife called? The Relative. Yeah, I got one of these. I got a Relative. I've got real relatives like in my family, and then I've got the relative of the knife, EMP EDC. So, brief overview of this company. It is a single person operation where he does all the designs and the aesthetics and all that stuff, and then overseas OEM, right? Just like Arcane Designs, which I'm also kind of a fan of, just like Something Obscene Company, which I'm also a fan of. Those are about it, right? Those three. I don't have a sock, Something Obscene down here, but those are the only three I kind of mess with. There's a few others. I think Vero Engineering, right, is like that. I don't know. I don't know all the ones, but these are the three. Imagine the other one that I like. And I think I prefer Arcane Design, Something Obscene over EMP in general. Although, like, this one is pretty bussin' right here. This Nimble, Warncliffe, Nimble W. This one's pretty cool. I love their tuxedo with the frag pattern. Anyways, we'll talk about that one later. So, we are taking a look at the Relative. Pretty standard stuff. Titanium frame lock, ball bearing pivot, lock bar insert, double duties as the over travel, M390 steel, right? Like, yeah, M390. I remember when M390 was like crazy super steel. I remember when like Spyderco would do M390 sprint runs, and now it's like M390s everywhere. Nobody cares about it. M390. It's a good steel. It feels like a lot of the Chinese manufacturers don't heat treat it as well as they should, so it kind of is mediocre by today's standards, or maybe a little above mediocre. You know, it's good. It's good. But if you're somebody that chases new steels, you know, it's going to be like, oh, M390 again. But you're going to see that a lot on the Chinese-produced knives, is the M390, and it's good stuff. Ball bearing pivot, full titanium construction. This is a full metal knife. That seems so standard now. Full metal on everything. I remember when that was a big deal because G10 and micarta, all those things were like more common than they are now. And if you're not into like Emerson's, then you really don't see that as much. I guess Civivi and Wii are kind of on some of their knives, they're kind of bringing that back. But for the most part, like all metal knives are pretty common, pretty standard. And that's what you have here. Medium-sized knife, kind of fits the bill for just general purpose. So I'll get the main points out of the way in case you don't want to stick around for any details. This is an all-around good knife. It's thin, thinner than I expected, like thinner than my Arcane Design. It carries very well. It's lightweight. Let's get a weight on it really quick. It's a good, usable, carryable knife that you can, 4.3 ounces, like, wow, 4.3 ounces. Lighter than I actually thought it would be because it's not a small knife, you know, it's not huge, but it's not a small knife. Just under 8 inches, 3.5-inch blade, like full on 3.5-inch blade. Cutting length is what, 3.25 about. It's a good knife, a good all-around knife. One thing I do want to point out, though, a lot of people ask, what's the difference between the Relative and the Nimble X? There's a lot of subtle differences, very similar, though, but the biggest one is deployment methods. The Nimble X, just like all the other Nimbles, has a rear flipper as well as a front flipper, and then whatever front deployment method is available. So there's 3. This one does not have a rear flipper. However, okay, right when I go to say it, I mess it up. It does front flip like a boss. You can see how it sticks out more proud, right? Way easier to front flip the Relative than the Nimble. I suck at doing the Nimble. The Relative, though, I'm not a good front flipper, and I can front flip the Relative pretty consistently, whereas the Nimble, I mess up all the time. So it just has the thumb hole, spider flick, thumb flick, and the front flip, which is a lot of fun. Front flipping is pretty fun. Nothing in the back, though, and that's really the biggest difference. And I would say that probably the biggest detriment to the relative is just how similar it is to the Nimble X, especially since I think they're doing another Nimble X drop, and you are kind of like, it's just the same type knife. Another interesting thing I want to point out, it is compound ground, so it's flat ground up on the front, and then it's hollow ground here. However, it's such a slight, like it's so slight, like you can hardly even tell that it's compound ground. And arguably, I don't think any normal person in cutting would tell a difference between cutting back here or cutting up here. I mean, you can tell it's thinner back here, but like, I don't know. Your average person would never tell a difference between the cutting power. And the tip is pretty thin. It's not super robust. So for those that don't know, usually you do the compound grind so that you get completely different attributes on the blade. You use this for slicing because it's nice and thin due to the hollow grind. And then the front is for harder use, prying, cutting things that are maybe a little bit tougher because it's thicker behind the edge. It's got a thicker tip. It's not going to break as much. So that is still true here. It is technically thinner here and thicker there, but just not as much contrast as you usually see on a compound grind. And in fact, I did some customization on this knife, by the way. This is not a configuration you're going to be able to get from them. I did stonewashing and weathering on it. I think it looks way better than factory. But technically, out of the box, it did have a little bit of a transition point here, you know, kind of like a Tonto, right, where the two different planes mix and you get a little bit of a point. And when I went to sharpen it, I tried to maintain it, and then I was like, it's so slight, who cares? And I just went over it, and it doesn't matter. And it should be right here where these two grinds kind of meet up and are different. But like I said, it's such a slight difference. It's kind of interesting. You can hardly even tell. I really like the fuller on this boy. It's cool looking. It allows you to open it up like wherever you want on top of the hole. That's one of my favorite features of EMP is kind of when they do this kind of stuff. You see it on the Nimble kind of too. This one doesn't have the fuller all the way through, but it kind of has this stepped up hole thing. It just looks pretty sweet. It is a little thin for me when I put it in my hand. It just feels a little off. Obviously fully usable. Like it doesn't cause any problems. It just feels a little thin for me. It doesn't feel as like big in the hand as I would like. I don't like thin knives, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Like I mentioned, lock bar insert, blah, blah, blah. It's got cool milling pattern on here. I'll talk about what I did to it. What I did to it really makes that pop. Before, couldn't really tell. Milled pocket clip right there. Great construction. Everything is pinned with collars and perfectly centered. Super smooth. Really nice. Ceramic ball detent, ceramic ball bearings. I think I already said that. No play or slop in anything. I like how they did this relief cut here rather than doing a traditional kind of deal here. Instead of doing a big part removal, that's a technical term, they do these cuts, which I think, you know, it doesn't make a difference, but just visually looks different, looks kind of cool. I like it when companies do little things like that to distinguish themselves. You've got some nice jimping that they run all the way up the spine just for looks, really. I mean, you only need it here. Although, I don't know, I guess if you use the choil and choke up on it, you know, this is good too. So I take that back. Fully functional all the way up the spine there. Really nice. It rides pretty deep carry. I mean, this is like perfect for me. I don't like super deep carry. I don't think I have anything down here. I don't get a lot of deep carry stuff. And I don't do the whole aftermarket pocket clip. Honestly, I would prefer some of my knife to hang out because then people might notice it and we can strike up a conversation and talk about knives. I've had that happen at Home Depot, actually. Somebody noticed a hat I was wearing, and then they noticed I had a Strider, and they'd never checked out a Strider, and so we had a little conversation there. It was pretty cool. But, you know, sometimes it can be pushed too far where like half the knife is hanging out, and that's just annoying. Gets caught on things, and anyways. But this is about good medium, right? You could go deeper. But this covers all your bases anyways. Pocket clips, good. All that stuff's good. So overall, it's a good knife. It's not my favorite, and mainly just, you know, it's well done, right? There's nothing I can say that's like they did this wrong or this is an issue. Just more of it wasn't as cool as I thought it was. A little thinner than I wanted it to be. And it just doesn't scream to me like cool, especially when I got it. So when I got it, the whole thing was just flat PVD'd, right? No contrast, no texture, straight PVD blade, straight PVD handle. Everything was just straight PVD. When I bought it used. It actually had a scratch on the pocket clip anyway. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stonewash this biatch. And I did. So I did a nice stonewash on the blade there. You can see it's my usual like scratchy type stonewash that I like to do. Then I didn't stonewash the handles. I just sanded them to bring out these peaks and bring out the edges here. I left the backspacer alone, I believe. No, did I? No, I sanded the backspacer, obviously, because it was just straight black. And then I sanded and stonewashed the pocket clip, and you can still see that scratch. Like, holy crap. The dude that sold it to me listed it as mint, and it had that scratch. The scratch you can still see after sanding and stonewashing, and you can still make out that scratch. Man, people's definitions of mint are getting ridiculous. But regardless, I saw the scratch, even though he said mint, like I knew it was there. It wasn't hidden. I saw it in the video. And I was somewhat hoping that because he said it was mint, that maybe it was just some schmutz on there or surface deposit, you know, because sometimes aluminum or keys will make it look like it's scratched, but really it's just some zinc or whatever on the surface. You can clean it off. Nope, it was a full-on deep scratch in the pocket clip. Anyways, but that gave me the oomph to do the customization. I think it looks better for sure because you get more detail, there's more texture, there's more going on. However, I'm not the biggest fan of the full murdered out look. It's just, I don't know, the whole blacked out thing I don't love. I love dark blades, but I like that contrast. Like this, to me, chef's kiss. I love how this plays off each other. Anyways, relative, it's a good all-around knife. To me, it doesn't scream anything in particularly amazing. If I was to suggest an EMP EDC, I would go with one of the Nimbles, the Tuxedo, you know, which is the silver and the black, and the Wharncliffe is my favorite blade style, which is why I got this one, but the others are cool too. Keep in mind though, with the Nimble, they're all relatively, they're all relatively the same size, but the blade shape will affect overall length and blade length and stuff. So keep that in mind in terms of sizing. And I think the X is the biggest. This is like the medium, and then the drop point's like the smallest, something like that. So keep that in mind. But relative's pretty good, but it doesn't, you know, I'm not screaming from the rooftops to go buy this thing, but if you find one at a good price and you're interested, I would pick one up. All right, guys, like, comment, subscribe, leave comments down below. I'd like to hear from you guys. Let me know what your opinion is. See you later.